Hello everyone and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. My name is Mark and I'm going to be presenting to you this afternoon, and we're going to be talking about how to spot scams. So this afternoon I'm coming to you from a very hot and sunny South Wales. So please let's start by saying hello. Can you say hello in chat? Tell me where you are coming from this afternoon. So we'll see where people are. And then we'll get started. So let's have a look. Hello there, Petro from South Africa. Welcome. Delph also from South Africa. So welcome to you too. Helene, also from South Africa. Nafisa from Iran. So hello to you. Ranuka from the US. Welcome to you. Therese from the Philippines. Hello. And Amanda, also from South Africa. Judy from Grenada. Hello to you. Okay. All right, excellent. So lots of different places that people are tuning in from this afternoon. That's great to see. All right, let's get started. So like I say, this afternoon we are going to be talking about scams and how to spot scams. So we're going to be looking at both teaching online and face-to-face, so moving to a different country. So if you're going to work in another country, especially one that's far away from your home, it can be very daunting. So I've worked in several different countries. The first place I worked was Mexico City when I was 21. So you can imagine what a massive change that was from here in the UK to going to Mexico City. So of course it can be very daunting. You want to make sure that you do your homework before you go. There are bad schools and bad organizations everywhere. And so doing your research is really important so that you are confident that you're making the right choice for you. And where you're going is going to be the best place for you, and you're going to have a great experience. So where to start? The most important thing has got to be to make sure that you're using reputable websites, because you're doing your TEFL certificate with the TEFL Academy. Of course, one of the best places to look is going to be our jobs board. So definitely start by having a look there. But there are other places you can look as well. Other websites such as TEFL.com can be a really good place to look. And then national newspapers. So here in the UK, newspapers such as the Times Education Supplement and the Guardian, they often have national and international TEFL jobs. So try and make sure that you're using a reputable source when you start your job search. So this, of course, traveling with other people, it's not always possible. But there are things that you can do to help make sure your experience is even better. So if you've got friends and family who are thinking of traveling, maybe you can travel together so you get an even better experience. If you know people who already live in another country, maybe you can consider moving somewhere near where they are. So, and they then as well can offer experience, and they can offer you advice on what to look out for. Another good thing to do is to get recommendations from people who have already traveled. So, or taught online as well. So people who have traveled, so you can ask them about their experiences, so what was good, what things to watch out for, and teaching online as well. So what companies they've worked for that are good, and which ones to be aware of that could be a problem for you. So have those conversations, talk to other people. Talk to friends and family as well about the jobs that you're interested in. If you've got your heart set on traveling to a particular country or a particular city, you might have rose-tinted glasses about certain jobs. So talking it through with friends and family, they can highlight questions, but maybe some things that you didn't think about. Okay. Think about whether you want to work for a large multinational or large national organization or a small school. Both have their risks and both have benefits. It's always worth remembering that the big international organizations such as EF, International House, Shane in Lingua, organizations like these, they're franchises. So what that means is that each individual school or city is going to be run by a different owner, and it's going to be run in perhaps a different way. So just because one EF school or one international house is good, another one might not be quite so good and might have different issues depending on how it's run. So that can be a good thing to remember. So when I started teaching, I was told that it's always better to go for a big international company. Unfortunately, that experience didn't work out very well for me. And my next job, I worked for a very small school. It was me and the director and occasionally one other teacher. And that was brilliant. It was a great experience. So you never can really tell. All right. It's what feels right for you and is what is working best for you after that research. And so the research, what should you be looking for? So look at the organization's website. What does it tell you about the organization? Does it look professional? Does it look, are there spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes? The information that they've got, is it out of date? So if organizations have won awards, they'll very often put on their website, the awards that they've won. But if the awards that they've won are from 1999, why is that? Why are they still showing that information? Why haven't they won anything since then, perhaps? Okay. Also look at, do a Google search to see what other information comes up about the organization. Okay. So rather than just their website, do a Google search. Look on social media as well. So in this situation, of course, if you have social media, so if you have Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever, then you can search using your own profile. But even if you don't have social media, if you do a Google search, then it will bring up the organization's social media content. So you can see what presence they've got online. So if you do these searches, so if you look for their website, if you do a Google search, if you look for their social media presence and there's nothing there, so the only online presence they've got is the advert, then that could be a concern. There's other things that you have to think about. So, and there could be reasons why they don't have a big online presence. It could be to do with the size of the organization. For example, if it's a very small organization, then they might not have a great online presence. If it's somewhere where internet usage isn't high, then this could also explain their lack of online presence. So just because an organization isn't online or doesn't have a big presence online, that doesn't mean it's a definite no, but it's something to have in the back of your mind as you move forward. Okay. So the next thing to do is to search for reviews. whether this is from students or past employees. So again, when you're looking on Google, when you're looking on social media, there should be reviews. Okay, everyone reviews everything nowadays, and so that shouldn't be too difficult to find. They're mostly going to be student reviews, but that's going to give you a good indication of what the organization is like. Because if they've got good student reviews and the students are saying how great the teachers are, well, if the students think the teachers are really good, then the teachers must be pretty happy. So that can be a good indication. Then there's sites like Glassdoor, which will have employee reviews as well. So that can be good when you're looking for information about like salary, you know, how good the salary is if you're not sure, and what staff turnover, what the staff turnover is like. So if people don't stay in the organization very long, that could be possibly a concern. On websites like Reddit, for example, there are blacklists. So there are these are lists where people report and they talk about bad experiences that they've had in different schools. Okay. And it's quite easy to find. You can just Google TEFL blacklists, Reddit, for example, and they will come up. So here, like I say, people write reviews. They talk about the problems that they've had with different organizations, and they will talk about the face-to-face schools and also online platforms as well. But just a note of caution about these. If somebody has written a bad review about a place, like anywhere else really, take that into consideration, but don't necessarily reject somewhere because of one bad review. Just like there are bad schools or bad organizations, unfortunately, there are also not very good teachers. And if a teacher has lost their position because of issues around alcohol or drug misuse or turning up to work late or any other multiple issues, then they might not be very happy about it, and that could be why they've written a review. Okay, so do take that into consideration. However, on these blacklists, if there's a school that's mentioned multiple times by multiple different people over an extended period of time, then that could be a cause for concern. Finally, another thing to look for is a physical address. This should be true whether it's an online platform, so you're thinking about teaching online, or whether you're planning to actually move to a place to teach face-to-face. Look for that physical address. If you can only find a PO box, then that could be a concern. Okay, so it's something, again, to be aware of. So you've done your research, you're happy with what you've found out so far. You've found their social media presence, they've got really good reviews, Glassdoor reviews are okay. You've got lots of information about the organization, and you've got an interview. That's great. The first thing to consider, if you're offered a job without an interview, don't accept it. All right. As uncomfortable as interviews can be, as stressful as interviews can be, it's as much about what you can learn about the organization as what they learn about you. Okay. And I have had this happen to me before. I came back from Mexico and was looking for a job, and another school in Mexico emailed me and they said, yeah, we've got a job for you, just turn up and you can start work. So I was back in the UK at the time. So it's like, no, I'm not going to go all the way to Mexico for a job that I haven't been interviewed for. Okay. And that should be true. It doesn't really matter whether it's down the road or the other side of the world or online. Okay. If you haven't been interviewed, don't accept it. Keep looking. When you're being interviewed, take a moment to think about the person interviewing you. Who are they? Is it the owner of the school or a manager of the school? Is it the director of studies? Who are they? Do they seem professional to you? The way they're dressed, the way that they've presented themselves. The questions that they're asking you, are they, for example, are they focused on interviewing you, or are they, looking at their mobile phone? Are they replying to messages or things like that? Are they invested in the interview? Remember to ask questions as well, and think about, are they able to answer questions? If there's some questions they might say, oh, we need to get back to you on that, that's fine. But if it's every question that they're not really sure of, maybe that could be a concern. So when you're asking questions, it could be things about like professional development. So do they do teacher training? Do they do observations and things like that? And the answer should be yes. The answer should be yes, we do teacher training. Yes, we do observations. That's what you want to hear. As new teachers, you need that development. And so if during the interview they're like, yeah, we don't really worry about lesson planning, we don't really worry about observations and things like that, I would say that's probably a reason to be concerned. And personally, I think I would keep looking in that case. So the interview's gone well, they're happy with you, you're happy with them, everything's moving forward. The next thing to do is to ask for a copy of the contract. Of course, if you're teaching online, then all of this will be online anyway. But if you're moving to another country and you're going to be teaching in another location, then before you move, you should ask to see the contract and also read through it very, very carefully. Make sure you're happy with everything that's in there. Also, ask to speak to a current or a former employee. This really shouldn't be a problem. They might not be able to do it straight away. So if you ask like during the interview, if it's possible, obviously they probably won't be able to go and grab somebody and speak to you right away, but they should be able to arrange it for another time. If they're reluctant to do this or they can't do it, you've got to think about what that says about the organization. If they can't get somebody to come along and have a chat with you about for 5 minutes about what it's like to live in that town or city or that country, what things you should be aware of, what things you should think about bringing with you. If they haven't got somebody who can do that, then that's got to be a reason for concern. Okay. And then finally, one particular scam to be aware of is where the interviewer, obviously this is an online interview, the interviewer says that they're having technical issues and they need to take remote access of your device so they can solve the technical issues. If this happens to you at all for any reason, whether it's an interview or any other situation, this is a scam. Okay, end the interview, cancel the call straight away. Okay, so do be aware of that. That is something that I've heard a few times from people. So please be aware of that. The whole point of all of these things, doing all of this research and asking all of these questions to the interviewer and asking questions to yourself as well, is to make sure that you are prepared. Teaching whether you move to another country or whether you're teaching online. It should be fun. It should be an enjoyable experience. And it shouldn't be stressful. And you want to make it as free from stress as possible. And so doing these steps, doing this research will help you. And we're really lucky now with all the information that's online. Everything is accessible. With a few clicks of the mouse, you can get pretty much all the information you need, which is really different from when I started teaching, where this wasn't really a possibility. The internet was really just starting going. And so you couldn't do the research that you can do now. So it's really important to take that time and do the research. Okay. Thinking about the contract. So it may be that you have to pay for the flights and the visas. It's always best to organize this yourself rather than let the school do it. If you're planning on moving to another country, then depending where it is, they may offer flights, paid flights, and they should organize the visas for you. But of course, like I say, not all teachers are great, and so schools have to protect themselves a little bit. So they might say to you, right, you've got to pay for the flights, and then we'll refund you, after 6 months or something like that. And that's okay. That does happen. And that's absolutely fine. But organize it yourself. Make sure you understand what the requirements are for visas in the place that you are traveling to. So in some countries, like some South American countries, it is normal or more normal to arrive on a tourist visa. Then once you're there, change it to a work visa. But make sure that that is something that's allowed in the country that you're traveling to. Don't rely on the school or the organization to tell you what the visa requirements are. Spend some time, do some research, and check that you know for yourself, okay? Don't pay any fees for a job in any situation, in any job really that you're applying for. There shouldn't be any fees or anything. So if they're asking money for a job, just keep searching. Check for unreasonable penalties for missed classes and other things. Really, I mean, apart from illness, you shouldn't really be missing classes in any case. And there shouldn't be any penalties or anything for missed classes. But there could be, like for being late to classes or things like this. So again, just look in the contract for those things and see what's there, see what it says. Something which can occur online and which you should really avoid is to not accept doing first lessons for free. So the organization will say that this is a way for you to present yourself to potential students, and a way for you to get clients. But what can end up happening is you end up doing a load of free lessons and not actually getting any students because maybe they sign up for another teacher or any variety of things that can happen. So don't don't accept it. Don't do free lessons. Okay. Things to be aware of. So if you're not getting paid when you expect to be paid, or you don't get paid what was agreed, then really don't teach any more lessons. So this is something that happened to me many years ago. One of the first places I tried teaching online, it was a school in China, and we agreed the fee, and I taught the block of lessons, The student agreed to carry on with another block of lessons, and I taught the first one in the new block, and the amount I got paid was significantly less. And when I asked about this, they said, "Oh, we had to offer a discount for the student to carry on." And I was like, "Yeah, but you didn't agree that with me. You didn't talk to me about it. So why am I being charged less?" But that's what it is. That's something I really agree with. If they needed a to organise a discount, they at least should have spoken to me about it first of all. If communication with the organisation stops suddenly, don't teach. One of my colleagues was talking about a relative of hers who was teaching online, and suddenly she stopped hearing from the organisation. The lessons were still carrying on, but she wasn't hearing anything from the organisation. So she stopped teaching, and then a few weeks later heard that the organisation had closed down. Had gone into administration. If there's anything that you're not happy with when you're teaching online, it's much easier to walk away. So it's pretty difficult if you've moved to the other side of the world, but even then it's not really impossible. If there's anything that you're not happy with, then you can just walk away. And finally, remember, when you're looking at a job advert, when you're being interviewed and they're telling you about the package that they're going to offer you, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Okay, so do be aware of that. So if you're being interviewed for a job and you see that they're offering the pay is substantially more than other schools in the area that you know about, then there could be a reason for that. All right, so if it's too good to be true, unfortunately, it probably is. All right, so now we're going to go over to you for our Q&A. So in the chat, if you can write any questions that you've got about what we've talked about this afternoon, so scams, and I will do my best to answer as many as I can, and to help you out. So let's see what questions we've got from you this afternoon. Now, I understand that it's perhaps a difficult one to have questions about, because until you start applying for jobs and you're seeing what's there, it can perhaps be difficult to know what to look out for. So let's see. So, like I said, one of the things to do is to make sure that you get a copy of the contract before you move anywhere. That doesn't guarantee that there aren't going to be problems, of course, but it does give you the opportunity to check out the contract, and if there's any differences when you arrive, they offer you a different contract. Then you can question that. But really, it'd be a good idea to try and get the contract signed before you go. Right, we've got a nice question here from Pierre. Are there any scams in the volunteering section? I mean, of course, the scams that we're talking about here are not really any different to any scams in any other industry. Okay. I think really the difference, of course, here is in many cases you are going to be traveling and you're going to be, uprooting your life and going to another part of the world, rather than starting a job down the road. But all the things that we've talked about this afternoon, will apply whether you're going to be doing a paid job, volunteering, working online, or anything else. So you should still follow the same process. And actually, if you're volunteering, what you've got to think about is that there could be a bigger financial burden for you, because you might have to pay for your travel expenses up front, and things like that, and you might have to pay for your visa. So you don't want to be paying out money, and then find out it's a scam. So do research. And volunteering organizations, that should be pretty easy online to get information about them. Okay, so thank you for that, Pierre. Right, we've got another question here from Renuka. So if you apply to an organization and they ask you to interview with the school, will the organization give the information of the school, name, address, etc.? Well, you would hope that by the time you're interviewing, you've at least got the school name, the name of the organization that you're hoping to work for. And just with that should be enough for you to Google the organization and then get their address and everything else. So even if they don't give it to you, because when you're being interviewed, there's perhaps, unless you're actually going to a face-to-face interview, which for us very often is unlikely, it's more likely to be an online interview, if you're traveling to another country or teaching online. So there wouldn't be an awful lot of need perhaps at that point for them to give you the address, but the name of the organization, and then you should be able to find that out. Okay, so thank you for that, Renuka. Let's have a look. Cass. So could you please give an example of an unreasonable penalties to look out for, just to make sure I have a clear understanding of what to watch? Well, I suppose that this really is going to be different in different parts of the world. And different parts of the world perhaps have got different expectations of what is acceptable as a penalty. I mean, personally, for me, in the places that whether it's places I've taught or places where I've worked in management, I'm not sure that really any penalties are acceptable. I mean, if you don't teach classes because you are ill, then you can't really expect to get paid. Okay. But if they are taking money from you for being late, for example, I would say that that's not really acceptable. I would, if you were a teacher for me and you were constantly late for lessons, I'd speak to you about lateness rather than a penalty. So for me, I think really any penalty is unacceptable. So really, it's down to you to look at what in the contract they say. If you're 5 minutes late, we will charge you 10% of your lesson, or 25% of your lesson, or things like something like that. You have to look at it yourself and think, well, do I really agree with that? For me personally, I wouldn't. I don't think it's acceptable. Right, a question here from Linda. At what stage would you send copies of identity documents, passports, etc.? That's got to be when you're offered the job and when you're comfortable with the organization. Obviously, we have, there's a big thing everywhere now about identity theft, and we've really got to be careful about when we're handing over personal information. So it's got to be when you've been offered a job, it's got to be at that point of where, you know, you're looking at contracts and things like that. The school are going to want to see documents. They're going to want to see your teaching qualifications. They're going to want to see your passport so they know that you have the right to work there and so on. All right. So it's got to be when you're comfortable and when they're ready. Okay. So you've got to be really sure that you're happy with the organization before you give over personal details like that. Thank you for that, Linda. Right, we've got a question here from Helene. If the application specifies one needs to work, sorry, let me try that again. If the application specifies one needs a work visa, for example, the EU, does this mean they won't help out citizens from another non-EU country? That's an interesting question. I would say that an organization is probably going to choose the easiest, the best candidates, but also the easiest candidate, if that makes sense. Having to apply for visas, having these work regulations obviously costs money for organizations. And they will want to spend as little money as possible. Okay. So if they have two people applying, they both have the same qualifications, same experience, they both interviewed really well, one needs a work visa, the other one doesn't need a work visa, unfortunately, they're probably going to go with the one who doesn't need a work visa. Okay. However, what I would say to that is when you are at the point of applying for jobs, if a job looks interesting and you like the look of it, you like the look of the organization, and you fit most of the criteria that they're asking for, apply for the job. Okay. When I did my certificate a very long time ago, the lead tutor on the course told us that there was no point in applying for any jobs in Europe because everyone wants to work in France and Spain and so on, and so you'll never get a job there. And so I did. I went to Mexico, stayed there for a little while, came back, and saw a job advertised in Spain. And I was like, well, there's no point in applying for that job because I'm not going to get it because this is what the lead tutor said. And my mum said, well, apply for it. What's the worst that can happen? The worst thing they can say is no. So I applied for the job. They interviewed me by telephone. They asked, when could I start? And I said, well, at the moment, I'm living in my parents' house, living out of a suitcase. I can literally get on a plane tomorrow. And I got offered the job. And I stayed there for about 4 years. So if it looks good and you fit most of the criteria, apply for it. Okay, if you're happy, then go for it. The worst thing they can do is say no. Okay, so give it a go. Thank you for that, Helene. Okay, who have we got next? We've got Ingmar. So I'd like to find a job in Serbia. Do I need to learn Serbian to work as a TEFL teacher? Well, so using your students L1 in class, so using their first language in class, is something that falls in and out of fashion. When I did my TEFL certificate, we were told that you absolutely should not ever use the students L1. When they come through the door, it should be only English the entire time they're in the door. That kind of changed a few years ago, and the idea was that yes, you should be using the students L1 translate. It makes things easier. And know we're probably somewhere in between at the moment with this. These things come into fashion and go out of fashion again. I've managed to teach. When I went to Mexico, I didn't speak Spanish, and I managed to teach English. I went to Ukraine for 9 years. When I went there, I didn't speak Ukrainian or Russian, and I taught from 4-year-olds to 60-year-olds, from absolute beginners to proficiency level students. With good planning and good preparation, anything is possible. Okay, so I would say that for your classroom experience, to be a teacher teaching English, it is not necessary to use the student's L1 and for you to know the student's L1. However, for day-to-day life, to integrate into the community and to be part of the community that you are living in, you would want to learn some of the language. To, even if it's to be able to go to the shops, go to a cafe, get a taxi, things like that. So while you don't necessarily need it for the classroom, to be part of the community, it's always a good thing to know a little bit of the language. So thank you for that. Let's see. Okay, so so this is from Arash. What are the most authentic websites that offer TEFL jobs? So, like I said, the best place to look first of all is the TEFL Academy jobs board. Okay, have a look there. Then you could look at other websites like like TEFL.com. That can be a good website to look at. And then look in your national press. Where do people often look for jobs in your country? Okay, so that's obviously going to be a bit different for different countries. Okay, so yeah, have a look there. Jobs board for the TEFL Academy is definitely your first port of call. Okay. What are the most common scams if one is looking to teach online? All right, this is a great question. Thank you, Amanda. The thing with teaching online is that it's probably more difficult to spot a scam. Okay, because it will be things like, for me, getting people to teach for the first lesson free, I think that's a scam. All right, because I would expect that they are probably charging the student for that lesson, even though they're getting you to teach it for free. Okay, so that's the first thing to be aware of. The next thing, again, it's like the penalties, isn't it? If you don't turn up for a lesson, or if you're late for a lesson or something like that, then they might put some penalties. Personally, I think that if you don't sign up for a lesson, you don't get paid. That's it. You shouldn't be more than not paid, if that makes sense. Not paying you at all, it's quite difficult, isn't it, if you're teaching online, if the company doesn't pay you. But unfortunately, it does happen sometimes. So what I would say there is make sure that you know what day you're supposed to be paid on. If you're not paid on that day, then straight away ask why, and be prepared to not teach. If you haven't been paid when you're expected, straight away be prepared not to teach. Okay. When you're teaching online, look at the platform that the organization are using. There's obviously really big differences. But if they've got a good platform with loads of material, loads of resources to help you out, then that could be, you know, a good organization. So thank you for that, Amanda. Okay, we got another question here from Nafisha. What do you suggest for the beginning of our career? Online, offline? What about the length of contract? Wow, this is a great question. And I think really it's an impossible question to answer. It's absolutely up to you, and it's absolutely, what you want to do, especially when it comes to online or offline. There are multiple reasons why people would want to teach online rather than face to face. Okay, so that really comes down to you. Are you able to travel? Do you want to travel? So then if you are able to travel, and the whole point of you doing this is that you want to go and work in another country, the length of contract, well, most contracts now I think really are an academic year, so that tends to be about 9 months. You're really looking for a contract which is 6 to 12 months. Okay, that's going to be pretty normal. Most schools, though, will have the possibility of extending your contract. So if you're happy and they're happy, then that contract can be extended. When I started out teaching, one of the things that appealed to me was the idea of a 6-month contract, that you could go somewhere, you could work for 6 months, then after 6 months, pick up your stuff, go and work somewhere else and have a new experience somewhere else. And in fact, that didn't happen. I went to Spain on a 6-month contract. I stayed there for 4 years. I went to Ukraine on a 6-month contract and I stayed there for 9 years. Because the contract is extended and extended and extended, and suddenly you find that those 6 months are now a lot longer. Okay, so it does come down to personal preference. It's what you are looking for in your career. Okay, I suppose what you've got to think about as well is not what's happening at the start of your career, perhaps, but what's happening later on in your career. If you've been to lots of schools where you've only worked for 2 or 3 months, you've got to think about how's that going to look on your CV or your resume in a few years' time. Whereas if you've stayed in schools for the whole length of contracts, maybe you worked in different schools, but you stayed for an academic year in one place, then that's possibly that is going to look much better. So to summarize your question there, it's really up to you. It's what works best for you in your situation, but length of contract, at least 6 months, I would say. Okay, I hope that helps, and I hope that answers your question. Okay, so now we've got another question here from Helene. If I find myself caught up in a scam, who can I ask for assistance? Well, first of all, if it's an online scam, there's really very little you can do about it. Okay, apart from walk away and learn from the experience. Look within the country that you are in. How do you report these things? So here in the UK, there's a police website that you can go to and you can report online scams. So look in your country at what you can do. Okay, if it's a face-to-face, so if you go somewhere and it's not what you expected, then friends and family, unfortunately, you'll need to ask for help. And your consulate can also be a place to go for help. So like I say, the first place that I went to was Mexico City. And for lots of reasons, it didn't work out. It wasn't a very good school that I worked in. It was very badly managed, and it really didn't work out very well. And it was also one of these places where they said to go on a tourist visa. Once you arrive there, they change your visa to a work visa, which of course means that you have to hand over your passport. And I left the school and they still had my passport and they refused to give it back to me. So I had to go to the consulate, explain the situation. The consulate phoned the school. Suddenly they were able to give my passport back. Okay. So there's little financial support that a consulate can give you usually. Certainly what I found. But a practical thing like that, they are more able to help with. And then from there, so once you've done that, what can you do? You could, if you really like the place. So for example, I really liked Mexico City. Mexico City was amazing. And if I was older, I would have done things differently. So I came home and then went somewhere else. But if you really like the place that you're in, then print your CV, go around to some other schools and see if you can get another job with another school. Okay. All of these experiences you learn from. And each time something happens, whether it's good or bad, you learn from it. All you can do is to do as much research as possible, and be really confident in yourself that you've done everything you can to make sure that the job that you're applying for is legitimate. Okay. These webinars, about scams and so on, they're really important because you really do have to be aware of what's going on. But I don't want you to finish watching this webinar now and think, oh, maybe I don't want to travel. Maybe I should just stay at home. Please don't think that at all. All right. Like I said right at the start, there are lots of good organizations. The majority of schools, the majority of organizations are going to be really good. And if you do your research and you do your due diligence, there's no reason that you won't have a really good job and have a really good experience teaching. And when you go, whether you go to another country to learn or whether you're teaching online, you of course have the opportunity to learn as much as you are teaching your students, because you get to learn about their culture and their way of life, which is absolutely fascinating, and is something that I really enjoy over the years that I've been teaching. Okay, so I hope that you found this webinar this afternoon really useful. I hope that it's given you things to think about when you're searching for jobs. But the important thing is still go and teach. Go and give it a go. Find a really good job, a place that you're going to be happy and enjoy the experience. So that's pretty much it for this afternoon. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. As usual with these things, the last thing that we're going to do is to ask you to complete the survey. So if I can ask you just to spend a couple of minutes before you go, just to complete the online survey, so that we know what you like about these webinars, what we can do to improve, and any other webinars that you think would be useful that you'd like us to do. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. So thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone.